The Wall Walker. In October 1593, a Spanish soldier named Gil Perez was standing guard at his post in Manila, Philippines. He blinked, felt a moment of dizziness, and suddenly found himself 9,000 miles away, in the middle of Mexico City's main plaza, still wearing his Filipino-issued uniform, still carrying his weapon, still completely bewildered by what had just happened to him. But here's what makes this case extraordinary. Dozens of witnesses in Mexico City watched Perez materialize out of thin air in the crowded plaza. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity or someone who looked similar. This was the same man, with the same uniform, with detailed knowledge of recent events in Manila that wouldn't reach Mexico for months via traditional shipping routes. The Mexican authorities immediately arrested Perez, assuming he was either a deserter or some kind of spy. His story was impossible to believe. He claimed he had been transported instantaneously across the Pacific Ocean through what he described as a mystical portal. But Perez could provide specific information about recent political events in the Philippines that later proved to be completely accurate. What Perez described about his teleportation experience sounds remarkably similar to modern descriptions of digital glitches. He said reality flickered around him, as if the world had briefly paused and then resumed in a different location. He described feeling like he stepped through a doorway that opened in the air itself. Most unsettling of all, he claimed that for a moment he could see both Manila and Mexico City simultaneously, as if they were different rooms in the same building. When the next ship arrived from the Philippines months later, it confirmed every single detail of Perez's account. The governor had indeed been assassinated on the exact date Perez claimed, and witnesses in Manila confirmed that Perez had vanished from his guard post at the precise moment he appeared in Mexico City. The Spanish Inquisition investigated the case extensively, interviewing dozens of witnesses in both locations. Their official records, still preserved in the Vatican archives, concluded that Perez had experienced supernatural transportation that defied natural law. Modern researchers studying the case have discovered something even more intriguing. The geographical coordinates of his departure and arrival points form a perfect mathematical relationship across the Earth's surface. It's as if whatever mechanism transported him operated according to precise calculations rather than random chance. As if the universe briefly treated physical space like a navigable database rather than continuous matter. This brings us to our second case, the gravity holiday. Summer morning, 1969, in Taos, New Mexico. For exactly 17 minutes, the fundamental force that keeps us anchored to the Earth simply stopped working properly. Gravity, one of the most reliable constants in our universe, began functioning like a broken program. The anomaly began at precisely 10:47 in the morning, when residents throughout the town noticed objects behaving in ways that violated basic physics. Water flowed upward. People could jump extraordinary distances without falling back down. Cars had to be tied down to prevent them from floating away. The town's fountain began spraying water in all directions. As the liquid refused to fall back into the basin, Dr. Richard Morrison, a physicist who happened to be visiting the area, attempted to document the phenomenon with improvised experiments. What he discovered was that gravity wasn't completely absent. It had been reduced to approximately 15% of normal strength. Objects still fell, but slowly and gently, as if the town existed in a low-gravity environment like of the moon. The Surface television station, was filming a documentary about southwestern archaeology when the gravity anomaly began. Their footage, archived at the University of New Mexico, shows the reporter conducting an interview while papers and debris float around her in the background. The cameraman can be heard asking what was happening as his equipment began to drift away from him. What makes this case particularly compelling is the precision of the event. The reduced gravity effect lasted exactly 17 minutes and ended as abruptly as it began. Even more strange, The anomaly was confined to a perfect circle with a radius of approximately 2 miles centered on the town plaza. Outside this boundary, gravity functioned normally. When the 17 minutes ended, all floating objects crashed to the ground simultaneously, creating a cacophony of breaking glass and falling debris that could be heard throughout the town. Government investigators arrived within hours and classified most of the documentation related to the event. Official explanations ranged from mass hysteria to seismic activity, but none could account for the physical evidence or the dozens of photographs and film footage that captured objects suspended in mid-air. This represents one of the most thoroughly witnessed violations of fundamental physics in recorded history. A 17-minute glitch in reality where the universe forgot one of its most basic programming rules. The precision of the timing, the perfect circular boundary, and the systematic nature of the malfunction all point to something far more sophisticated than a natural phenomenon. These first two cases establish a pattern that we'll see repeated throughout our investigation. Reality glitches that follow mathematical principles rather than chaotic supernatural rules. Events that suggest our universe operates more like an incredibly complex computer program than the solid, continuous existence our senses tell us we inhabit. But these are just the beginning. The evidence we're about to explore will challenge everything you think you know about the nature of existence itself. Our third case, the Loop Day. In March 2011, Jennifer Kumar experienced something that shouldn't exist in our linear understanding of reality. She lived the same day 47 times in a row, trapped in what can only be described as a temporal loop that functioned exactly like a computer program, stuck in an infinite cycle. Each loop began at precisely 6:23 in the morning, when her alarm clock rang, and ended at 11:59 at night when she fell asleep, only to wake up again at 6:23 on what was still Tuesday, March 15th, 2011. Initially, Kumar assumed she was experiencing some form of psychological breakdown or vivid recurring dream. But as the loops continued, she began to notice patterns that proved her experience was devastatingly real. She could predict random events with perfect accuracy, which songs would play on the radio at specific times, when traffic accidents would occur and exactly where, what her co-workers would say in meetings word for word. Her knowledge of the day's events became so precise that she started conducting experiments to test the boundaries of her temporal prison. During the 12th loop, Kumar attempted to prevent a traffic accident she had witnessed in previous iterations. She called police to report the accident before it happened, providing exact details of when and where it would occur. The authorities initially dismissed her call as a prank, but when the accident happened exactly as she predicted, they became intensely interested in her apparent psychic abilities. What makes Kumar's case particularly fascinating is that she discovered she could accumulate knowledge and skills that persisted between iterations. Even though the rest of the world reset each time, she learned Italian, memorized entire books, and developed expertise in subjects she had never studied. Her consciousness remained continuous across the loops, while reality around her remained trapped in a 24-hour cycle. By the 23rd loop, Kumar had documented enough evidence to convince a small team of researchers at the local university that something extraordinary was happening. Dr. Sarah Chen, a physics professor, worked with Kumar to design experiments that could potentially detect the temporal anomaly using sensitive equipment. The most disturbing discovery came during the 31st loop, when Kumar realized she could influence the loop's parameters through focused mental effort. By concentrating intensely on specific times, she could extend or compress certain portions of the repeated day. She found she could make her lunch break last subjectively hours while the clock advanced only minutes. During the 45th loop, Kumar encountered another person who was aware of the repetition. An elderly man named Frank Rodriguez had been experiencing the same Tuesday for 3 loops. Together, they discovered that the temporal anomaly was expanding, trapping more people in the same repeating day pattern. The loops finally ended during the 47th iteration, when Kumar and Rodriguez performed a specific sequence of actions that somehow reset the temporal program. Kumar woke up on Wednesday, March 16, 2011, but retained all her accumulated knowledge and memories from the repeated days. Dr. Chen's final report, submitted to the Department of Energy, concluded that Kumar had experienced a localized temporal anomaly that suggested time itself operates more like a computer program with occasionally corrupted files than the linear progression we experience as normal reality. This brings us to our fourth case, the duplicate people. It happened in the small town of Millbrook, Illinois, in June 2003. Residents began reporting something that sounds like a rendering error in a video game. Exact duplicates of themselves were appearing throughout the town, going about daily routines in perfect synchronization with the originals. These weren't doppelgangers or lookalikes. They were pixel-perfect copies that moved, spoke, and behaved identically to their counterparts, as if reality was rendering each person twice. The first documented case involved Rebecca Martinez, a local librarian who was working alone when she saw herself walk past the window outside. Initially dismissing it as a reflection, Martinez went outside to investigate and found her duplicate shelving books in the reference section. The duplicate acknowledged her with a nod and continued working, apparently unaware that anything unusual was happening. As word spread through the small town, more residents discovered their own duplicates performing routine activities in different locations. The duplicates exhibited behaviors that proved they weren't hallucinations or imposters. They possessed complete knowledge of their original's memories, could answer personal questions that only the real person would know, and even had identical injuries and scars. Medical examination revealed that the duplicates had identical DNA, fingerprints, and retinal patterns to their originals. Dr. Michael Ross, a quantum physicist from Northwestern University, arrived to investigate and found that the duplicates appeared to be genuine matter rather than projections or illusions. They cast shadows, registered on thermal imaging, and interacted normally with physical objects. However, attempts to separate duplicates from their originals by more than approximately 500 meters resulted in both versions experiencing severe disorientation and memory fragmentation. The most unsettling discovery was that actions performed by either the original or duplicate were mirrored by their counterpart with a delay of exactly 4.7 seconds. If Rebecca Martinez picked up a book, her duplicate would perform the identical motion 4.7 seconds later. This synchronization was so precise that researchers could predict duplicate behavior with atomic clock accuracy. Video surveillance revealed that the duplicates weren't spawning randomly, but appearing in locations where their originals had been exactly 24 hours earlier. The pattern suggested that reality was somehow replaying previous versions of people, as if the town was stuck in a temporal buffer that was displaying cached copies of residents' past activities. The phenomenon lasted for 6 days before suddenly ending when all duplicates simultaneously faded away like static on a television screen. Witnesses described the disappearance as dissolving into pixels that briefly flickered before vanishing completely. Government investigators classified the incident and relocated most witnesses, but leaked documents suggest that similar duplicate events have been reported in other small towns across the Midwest, always lasting exactly 6 days and always involving perfect synchronization between originals and copies. The Millbrook duplicate incident suggests that reality might operate like a computer graphics program that occasionally renders objects twice, creating temporary glitches where people exist in multiple instances until the system corrects the error. But if duplicates represent rendering problems, our next case shows us what happens when reality decides to completely delete large sections of existence. The floating island. On September 23, 1997, commercial airline pilot Captain David Chen was flying from Seattle to Los Angeles when he witnessed something that violated every law of physics he understood. A landmass, approximately the size of Manhattan, was floating motionless in the sky at 30,000 feet. complete with trees, buildings, and what appeared to be people moving around on its surface. Chen immediately contacted air traffic control to report the impossible sighting, but radar showed nothing at the coordinates where he observed the floating island. However, passengers and crew on the flight confirmed his observations, with several taking photographs and video footage of the aerial landmass. The island appeared to be a complete ecosystem, suspended in empty air with no visible means of support. Through binoculars, Chen could see forests, structures that resembled buildings, and movement that suggested animal or human activity. The landmass cast a distinct shadow on the clouds below, proving it was a solid three-dimensional object rather than an optical illusion. Flight attendant Lisa Parker described looking down at the floating island and seeing what looked like a medieval village with people walking around, completely unaware they were flying through the sky. Other passengers reported seeing cultivated fields, roads, and even smoke rising from what appeared to be chimneys. As Flight 447 approached the floating landmass, Chen made the decision to alter course slightly to get a closer look. At a distance of approximately 2 miles, passengers could clearly see that the island was inhabited by human figures who seemed to be going about normal daily activities, despite their impossible aerial location. The most disturbing aspect of the sighting was that the people on the floating island appeared to notice the aircraft. Several figures were observed pointing at the plane and gathering in groups as if discussing the unusual sight. One passenger reported seeing someone on the island waving at the aircraft. Air traffic control scrambled 2 F-16 interceptors to investigate Chen's report. But by the time the military aircraft reached the coordinates, the floating island had vanished completely. The fighter pilots found empty sky with no trace of the massive landmass that dozens of civilian witnesses had observed just minutes earlier. Investigation by the FAA revealed that Flight 447's navigation instruments had malfunctioned during the sighting, showing impossible readings that suggested the aircraft was simultaneously at multiple altitudes and geographic locations. The technical malfunction lasted exactly as long as the floating island remained visible. Analysis of passenger photographs and video revealed images that experts confirmed had not been digitally altered, yet showed a landmass floating in empty sky under conditions that should have made such an object impossible to sustain. The island appeared to have its own weather patterns, with clouds forming around its edges despite the clear sky surrounding it. This brings us to our 6th case, the phase walker. It demonstrates what happens when the fundamental property that makes solid matter solid simply stops working. On December 14, 2005, John Stevenson was walking through Grand Central Terminal in New York City when he passed directly through a solid marble pillar as if it didn't exist, emerging on the other side unharmed, while dozens of witnesses watched in stunned silence. Security cameras captured the entire event, recording what appeared to be a complete violation of the fundamental principle that solid objects cannot occupy the same space. Stevenson later described the experience as feeling like walking through thick gelatin during the moments when his body overlapped with the marble column. He reported that he could see the internal structure of the pillar while passing through it, observing the steel reinforcement bars and concrete core as if they were transparent. The incident was witnessed by approximately 30 people in the terminal, including Port Authority police officer Maria Rodriguez, who was standing less than 10 feet away when Stevenson phase walked through the pillar. Security footage from multiple angles captured the impossible event with perfect clarity. The videos show Stevenson approaching the pillar at normal walking speed, his body partially disappearing into the marble surface and then completely passing through to emerge on the opposite side. Analysis by video forensics experts found no evidence of tampering or digital effects. Dr. Patricia Kim, a physicist at Columbia University, examined the security footage and confirmed that Stevenson's body appeared to occupy the same physical space as the solid marble pillar for approximately 2.3 seconds. Medical examination of Stevenson immediately after the incident revealed no injuries or unusual conditions that might explain his ability to pass through solid matter. However, electromagnetic field detectors revealed unusual energy patterns around his body that persisted for several hours after the phase-walking event. The most disturbing aspect of the incident was that Stevenson reported feeling like part of him was still inside the pillar for days afterward. He described sensing the column's presence even when he was blocks away from Grand Central, as if a portion of his quantum signature had become entangled with the marble structure. Follow-up investigation revealed that the specific pillar Stevenson passed through had been displaying unusual properties for weeks before the incident. Maintenance workers reported that the marble surface felt softer than normal, and electromagnetic instruments detected fluctuating energy fields within the column that had no identifiable source. The Port Authority immediately classified the incident and restricted access to the affected area, but witnesses continued to report that the pillar occasionally appeared translucent or flickering like a hologram with poor signal strength. Our seventh case takes us to Cedar Falls, Iowa, where an entire town experienced what can only be described as a cosmic undo button. The Reset Town. At exactly 3:17 in the morning on November 8, 2012, the entire community reverted to its exact state from 24 hours earlier. Every building, street, and object returned to its previous configuration, undoing a full day of changes, construction, and alterations. The reset was first noticed by night shift workers at the Cedar Falls Medical Center, who discovered that a wing of the hospital that had been demolished the previous afternoon had somehow reconstructed itself overnight. The building appeared exactly as it had 24 hours earlier, complete with medical equipment, patient records, and even the same patterns of wear on the flooring. As residents woke up that morning, they found their town had reverted to its previous state in impossible ways. Construction projects that had been completed were undone. Cars that had been moved were back in their original parking spaces. Even temporary changes like litter, graffiti, and road repairs had been reversed to match the town's configuration from the previous day. Sarah Mitchell, a local real estate agent, had painted her house green on November 7th, but woke up on November 8th to find it had returned to its original blue colour. The paint job wasn't just covered over. Chemical analysis revealed that the original blue paint had been molecularly reconstructed, including age-appropriate weathering and wear patterns that matched its condition from 24 hours earlier. The Cedar Falls City Planning Office discovered that their digital records had also been affected by the reset. Computer files that had been updated on November 7th reverted to their previous versions, and new documents created that day had vanished entirely. Even more disturbing, timestamp data showed that these files had been overwritten at exactly 3:17 in the morning by older versions of themselves. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a temporal physicist from the University of Iowa, investigated the reset event and found evidence that the entire town had been restored from what appeared to be a backup copy of its previous state. Her classified report concluded that reality maintains save files, and Cedar Falls was restored from a checkpoint created 24 hours earlier. The most unsettling aspect of the reset was its completeness. Not only had physical objects reverted, but biological systems had also been affected. Plants that had been trimmed or damaged on November 7th were restored to their previous condition. Even injuries suffered by residents that day had healed back to their state from 24 hours earlier. Investigation revealed that the reset had affected everything within the town limits with surgical precision. A construction project that spanned the border between Cedar Falls and neighbouring Waterloo was partially reversed. Only the portion within Cedar Falls city limits reverted to its previous state, creating a perfectly straight line where the reset effect ended. Government investigators found that similar reset events had been reported in other small towns across the Midwest, always occurring at 3:17 in the morning and always reverting exactly 24 hours of changes. The incidents appeared to be increasing in frequency, suggesting that reality's backup and restore functions were becoming more active. But perhaps the most visually disturbing glitch occurred in Bakersfield, California, on April 22, 2008, when reality began displaying in wireframe mode. A section of downtown started showing the underlying mathematical structure of buildings, streets, and objects as transparent geometric outlines instead of solid matter. The anomaly began at approximately 2:30 in the afternoon, when Maria Santos was walking past the Kern County Museum. She noticed that the building's facade was flickering between normal appearance and a translucent wireframe representation that showed the internal support structure, electrical wiring, and plumbing as glowing geometric lines. Within an hour, the wireframe effect had spread to encompass a 4-block area of downtown Bakersfield. Buildings appeared as transparent architectural blueprints. Cars looked like 3-dimensional modeling software diagrams. Even people occasionally flickered into wireframe representations that showed their skeletal structure and circulatory systems as geometric patterns. Professional photographer Alex Chen was in the area and captured extensive documentation of the rendering error. His photographs show buildings reduced to their basic geometric forms, walls represented as intersecting planes, windows as rectangular outlines, and architectural details as mathematical curves and angles. The wireframe objects weren't just visual effects. They maintained their physical properties despite their altered appearance. People could still enter buildings that appeared as transparent outlines, and vehicles continued to function normally, even when they looked like computer graphics models. The physics remained intact, even though the visual rendering had failed. Dr. Robert Kim, a computer graphics expert from UC Berkeley, analyzed Chen's photographs and confirmed that the wireframe representations followed standard 3-dimensional modeling conventions used in software development. These weren't random patterns, he noted in his report. They were organized exactly like wireframe models in computer graphics programs. The rendering error lasted exactly 47 minutes before reality suddenly snapped back to normal visual mode. Witnesses described the transition as instantaneous. Buildings went from wireframe outlines to fully rendered structures in the blink of an eye, like a graphics processor suddenly catching up with its workload. These cases paint a disturbing picture of reality that operates more like a sophisticated computer simulation than the solid, permanent universe we believe we inhabit. The patterns are too systematic, too precise, and too similar to digital glitches to be mere coincidence. Our 9th case takes us to the Riverside Shopping Mall in Phoenix, Arizona, where on July 7, 2016, reality began systematically deleting itself. The despawn event. Witnesses described what can only be called a despawn event, where objects, people, and entire sections of the building started disappearing in a pattern that looked exactly like computer memory, being cleared to free up processing resources. The event began at 11:43 in the morning when shoppers noticed that merchandise in several stores was vanishing systematically. Items didn't fall or get removed by any visible force. They simply ceased to exist, fading away like graphics being deleted from a computer screen. The disappearances followed a logical hierarchy, starting with non-essential decorative objects before progressing to more fundamental structural elements. Security guard Robert Martinez was patrolling the food court when he witnessed entire tables and chairs disappearing in sequence. It was like watching someone delete objects from a video game, he later testified. Things would just fade out, starting from the edges and working toward the center until there was nothing left but empty space where furniture had been moments before. The despawn effect wasn't limited to inanimate objects. Several shoppers reported seeing other people disappear completely, though curiously, no missing person reports were filed, and no one seemed to remember the individuals who had vanished. Security footage confirmed that people were indeed disappearing, but the recordings showed gaps where the missing individuals should have been, as if they had been digitally edited out of existence retroactively. Dr. Angela Foster, a quantum physicist from Arizona State University, arrived during the ongoing despawn event and documented the systematic nature of the disappearances. Objects vanished according to a hierarchy that prioritized essential structures over decorative elements, exactly like a computer program, optimizing memory usage by removing unnecessary assets. The most unsettling aspect of the Despawn event was that reality seemed accommodate the missing objects Leslie adjusted to. When a decorative fountain disappeared from the center of the mall, the surrounding floor tiles rearranged themselves to fill the gap, creating a continuous surface as if the fountain had never existed. Store layouts reorganized automatically when merchandise vanished, maintaining logical traffic flow despite missing inventory. Video analysis revealed that the disappearances followed a grid pattern consistent with computer graphics memory management. Objects vanished in systematic chunks that corresponded to standard data storage units, suggesting that physical reality might be organized like a computer file system with discrete, manageable segments. The Despawn event affected approximately 40% of the mall's contents before suddenly stopping at 2:17 in the afternoon. The remaining structures and objects showed no signs of the systematic deletion that had been progressing for nearly 3 hours. However, witnesses reported that the mall felt fundamentally emptier, even though all essential functions remained intact. Investigation by retail management revealed that the mall's inventory systems had automatically updated to reflect the missing merchandise, showing no record that the vanished items had ever existed. Financial records, insurance policies, and supplier contracts had been modified to match the post-Despawn reality, as if the missing objects had been retroactively removed from all documentation. Our final case brings us to Burlington, Vermont, where on March 3, 2019, residents began exhibiting behavior patterns that suggested they had temporarily become non-player characters in a simulation. The NPC glitch. People started repeating identical actions, speaking in scripted dialogue, and moving in predetermined paths with no apparent awareness of their programmed behavior. These 10 cases represent more than just unexplained anomalies. They're mounting evidence that the reality we experience might be far less solid than we assume. From soldiers teleporting across oceans to entire towns resetting like corrupted save files, each incident follows patterns that mirror computer system failures rather than natural phenomena. The mathematical precision of these glitches, their systematic nature, and their increasing frequency all point to a disturbing conclusion. We might be living inside the most sophisticated simulation ever created, one so advanced that we mistake it for base reality. But every program has bugs, and these reality glitches might be our only glimpse behind the digital curtain. What's most unsettling isn't just that these events happen, but that they're becoming more common. As if whatever system runs our universe is becoming increasingly unstable, or perhaps someone is actively debugging the code that maintains our existence. The wireframe buildings reveal the mathematical skeleton beneath physical matter. The NPC behavior shows us how consciousness itself might be programmable. The reset towns demonstrate that time and causality are just variables in a cosmic database. If we are living in a simulation, these glitches offer us the closest thing we'll ever get to proof. They show us that space can be navigated like a file system, time can loop like broken code, gravity can be adjusted like a parameter, and people can be duplicated, deleted, or reset like digital assets. The evidence suggests we're not just observing reality. We're experiencing an incredibly complex program that occasionally reveals its true nature when the code breaks down. And if that's true, then everything we think we know about existence, consciousness, and the nature of being needs to be completely reconsidered. The next time reality seems to glitch around you, don't dismiss it as imagination. You might be witnessing the universe's programming having a temporary malfunction, giving you a brief glimpse into the digital architecture that constructs everything you've ever known.